Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Going to give you some updates with what's going on in Israel and with the US and between the US and Iran. And then the bulk of the video, I want to focus on prophecies not yet fulfilled. You may remember that I created a new spreadsheet to try and go back and see when the last time was that a general authority said, this still has to happen. Blank still has to happen before the second coming. This prophecy is not yet fulfilled. And I also came across a couple interesting quotes and things having to do with the 10 lost tribes and the highway to be cast up out of the great deep. So I got some good stuff, but let's start with what's going on here. So this is from Sprinter. This is a account hostile to Israel, but they post good information, accurate information most of the time, it seems. And they posted this video, unprecedented missile attack on Tel Aviv and Jaffa. I'm not so sure that that's the case. Like I've told you in the last few videos, I've been trying to kind of gauge how big rocket attacks have been. And so if this is from today, then no, I don't think it is unprecedented. It was large. Let me show you it right here. So here's what the attack looked like. Let me go full screen. So it was large. I hit the Tel Aviv area. If this is the one that he's referring to. There was another one or like another couple that were similar in size, but it seems like it's this one. It was about 5 hours ago from the time that I'm recording this, which is on the 26th in the evening. So today was the day of, there was a few larger attacks, but I don't think anything unprecedented. But whatever the case, that is a pretty wild scene. Imagine that you live in that city, and this is what you see throughout the day and at nighttime, especially at night when it looks all dramatic like this. They are in a bad situation right now, and somehow rockets keep coming. And they've been coming ever since the 7th of October. Today, on the 26th, today's the 20th day of the war. And for you guys, on the 27th, it'll be the 21st day of the war. And I don't know what it takes or what it's going to take out all their rocket launching capabilities, or how many more they have. How many more do they have? How do they keep coming? I don't know. And then on top of that, that's just from the Gaza Strip. What about Hezbollah when they start ramping things up? Remember, you have Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in the Gaza Strip. This is primarily where the rockets are coming from. And they primarily target Tel Aviv, Ashdod, Ashkelon, and then kind of like these areas right around the Gaza Strip, from what I've seen. How many rockets do they have? And then up here, I know that Hezbollah has more than Hamas. So whenever that starts, if it does, that's going to be even crazier. I think, from what I understand. So, okay. So anyway, got a few things here. In the last video, I was talking about troop movements and military assets and stuff moving to the Middle East, like U.S. military assets. Pentagon says 900 U.S. troops heading to Mideast, 2 Iron Dome batteries to Israel. All right. Pentagon spokesman Pat Ryder says that approximately 900 U.S. troops are either in or on their way to the Middle East, but not Israel, as part of, quote, efforts to deter a broader conflict and further bolster U.S. force protection capabilities, end quote. He also says in a briefing that the U.S. plans to transfer 2 Iron Dome batteries to Israel. And I think those troops, most of them are Marines. I should have pulled this up. I wasn't even thinking about it. Marines deploy to Middle East. Let's go to the news. Pentagon rushes defenses and advisors to Middle East as Israel's ground assault in Gaza looms. And I see a picture of a Marine there. And then a week ago, Pentagon to order 2,000 U.S. troops to be ready for possible deployment to Middle East. That's from Stars and Stripes. So anyway, okay, the Pentagon has sent military advisors, including a Marine Corps general versed in urban warfare, to Israel to aid in its war planning and in is speeding multiple sophisticated air defense systems to the Middle East, days ahead of an anticipated ground assault into Gaza. So anyway, I just want to give you the general sense, if you haven't been following, that it's not just Israel. We have things to worry about too, because we have interests and we have sites in the Middle East. Okay, so there's that. The 900 heading to the Middle East, and then 2 Iron Dome batteries to Israel. And then we have this. Pentagon says U.S. air base in Iraq attacked again, causing minor damage. So this would be separate from what we talked about in a previous video. The Pentagon says that there was an attempted attack on Erbil, air base in Iraq, but there were no casualties and only minor damage to the facilities. Air Force Brigadier General Pat Ryder, Pentagon press secretary, declines to detail which Iranian-backed groups may be responsible for the recent spate of attacks on bases in Iraq and Syria. Well, there is this group, according to this post. This is from OSINT Defender, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. Okay, the Islamic Resistance in Iraq has claimed responsibility for an attack tonight, utilizing 2 kamikaze drones against U.S. forces at Al-Harir Air Base in the Erbil region. So, see, I think this is the same place. I think it's just a different spelling. You have Erbil, and then in this article it said Erbil Air Base. I don't know. But anyway, with both of the drones claimed to have impacted the base. So I think this might be the same event that's being referred to. I'm not exactly sure. The stories and this story and then this post came out around the same time, within like a couple hours of each other. This one first, and then a couple hours later. Wait. No. That was in the morning. So, no, this was like half a day before. I don't know. It still could be the same thing. But anyway, you see, you have groups in Iraq that are attacking U.S. forces. You see what I mean? And I don't know how bad things are going to get. Again, it seems like the big escalation will come whenever the ground invasion starts. So this is probably only the beginning. We saw in a recent video that they plan... I don't know if it's this group exactly, but there's some group in Iraq. I think Hezbollah Iraq. There's like all these different groups. But they put out like a statement saying that they're ready for a war of attrition, which is like a long war, a long ongoing war. So I don't know. Okay. Times of Israel, U.S. says it will respond to attacks on troops in Mideast at time of our choosing. So now we're talking about retaliation for attacks on these bases. A White House spokesman says the United States will respond at, quote, a time of our choosing and a manner of our choosing, end quote. To a recent spat of attacks the U.S. says has been carried out by Iranian-backed groups against U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East. The blunt warning from White House National Security spokesman John Kirby comes a day after U.S. President Joe Biden said Iran Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had been directly warned that the U.S. would respond if Iran or its proxies continued to attack U.S. troops. Well, and then Iran, on the other hand, this is from today, the 26th, at UN, okay, and there's video of this. You can find the video of it, but I just wanted to find a news article. This is from Newsmax. At UN, Iran warns U.S. will not be spared, quote unquote, if war continues. So Iran is threatening the United States. Iran's foreign minister Hossein Amir Abdollahian warned on Thursday that if Iran's retaliation against Palestinian militant group warned on Thursday that if Israel's retaliation against Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip doesn't end, the United States will, quote unquote, not be spared from this fire. And then continuing, I say frankly to the American statesmen who are now managing the genocide in Palestine that we do not welcome an expansion of the war in the region, but if the genocide in Gaza continues, they will not be spared from this fire. End quote. He told the United Nations General Assembly. No, that's pretty bold. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? Because I'm pretty sure that the United States is just a little bit stronger than Iran. But I don't know. They've been planning this for a couple of years. Who knows what else they have up their sleeve? Hopefully nothing terrible, nothing that we can't handle, but who knows? So you can see how there's potential for things getting much worse, and why they're talking about potentially a regional war. I don't think it's really too well known exactly what everybody's going to do once the ground invasion starts, but it seems like the ground invasion is that thing that's going to trigger the next phase, which could escalate to conflict between the United States and Iran and other groups, terrorist groups, militia groups in Syria, Iraq, Iran, I guess, maybe. You have Hezbollah, right, in Lebanon. So I don't know. Okay, OSINT Defender, a massive force of over 100 IDF armored vehicles, including a number of Caterpillar D9 armored bulldozers, have reportedly entered the city of Jenin in the West Bank within the last hour. So at the time that I'm recording this, that's only a couple hours ago. And like it said, Jenin is in the West Bank. So here's Israel. Gaza's down here. And Jenin is up here in the northern part of the West Bank. Earlier this year, Israel carried out its largest raid on Jenin in 20 years because there were some rockets that were fired for the first time in 20 years or something like that. And so they did this massive raid. But I know that Jenin it's a city that keeps coming up. And I think it's maybe a stronghold for would-be militants and resistance groups and whatever you want to call them in the West Bank. So there's been stuff going on all throughout the West Bank since the war started. But these videos are reportedly from Jenin. In what appears to be a large-scale raid for the arrest of Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad members. The force has already come under fire several times since they entered the city. And then I thought that this was pretty interesting. This is also from just about 2 hours ago at the time that I'm recording this. Heavy fighting between IDF ground forces and militants is continuing to occur near the Al-Borij camp along the border fence with the central Gaza Strip. While Israeli fixed-wing aircraft, that's just airplanes and jets, and AH-64 Apache attack helicopters are now reported to be actively engaging targets near the fence. So let's see if we can find this really quick on the map. It said it was near the central Gaza Strip. Whoa. That is not even close to where we're talking about. Maybe I need to include the word camp. Israel. Okay, well, you didn't recognize that name. So I'm guessing somewhere around here, from what it sounds like. So again, there are smaller things that are going on I think in preparation for the main ground invasion. In the last video, we talked about how bulldozers and stuff were coming through in the north and like preparing the way. There's been smaller incursions taking place. So things are happening, and it seems that it's in preparation for the big show. Okay, so that is it for the updates and what's going on in Israel. So there's a lot of moving pieces, and things could go horribly wrong, and it seems like they are going to go horribly wrong. That we're even right now at a point of no return. So the coming days, weeks, I think are going to be pretty interesting. All right, let's move on from here. So before we go on this new, before we look at this new spreadsheet that I created just within like the last week called Quotes, Prophecy Fulfillment 2, where I'm trying to search these different terms to get a feel for when was the last time that someone said, oh, this has not been fulfilled yet. Do we have lots of like recent times that that's been said? So far, it doesn't look like it, but I still have many other things to search. So before we get into that, though, as I was searching, I came across one quote that I've added to my 10 Lost Tribes spreadsheet. It's called Quotes 10 Lost Tribes, where I've attempted to capture all quotes talking about the 10 Lost Tribes, whether they are a hidden group still yet to be discovered that have not come forth yet, or if that was a misunderstanding of the early church and that they actually have. And what I've uncovered so far, this is all in chronological order, is in the early days of the church, if you'll notice the green colors here, if I color coded it green, it means that the speaker did speak as though there was a hidden group somewhere. And by the way, let me just clarify things really quick. People always say, well, why can't it be both? Why can't it both be the tribes are here with us today, they're scattered throughout the world, and there's a hidden group? The reason why is because either there's a hidden group or there is not. It doesn't matter what the size is. And the side that I've taken, not based on my own reasoning, not based on, what I prefer or anything like that. It's based on these quotes. There's a pretty stark contrast between the early days of the church. Here's one that's red. We're going to go over this one in just a minute because this is the new one that I found. There's a stark contrast between the early days of the church and the way that they spoke about the 10 lost tribes and in more recent times when it changes and everything turns red. Okay. So you can't just ignore one group or the other. You have to take them both. These are prophets, apostles, general authorities. And I don't believe in contradictions when it comes to the gospel and doctrines of the church. What I do believe is that sometimes things aren't initially understood or not fully revealed, and that the Lord over time reveals line upon line, precept upon precept, when things become more relevant, more important, more necessary to know. So I have no problem with any sort of contradiction. I go with what has most recently been said because of that concept and because of that principle. On the other hand, I don't know why. There's some people, I don't know if they're aware of these more recent quotes that have talked about these things pretty explicitly and why they just ignore them. I heard one person say, well, it's because when you go back in time, that's when you have the more pure doctrine. And that is not true. That is not true. They just spoke about that in this recent general conference. I can't remember if it was April of this year or October of last year. Let me read you something really quick. Comic. Let's see. Oh no, I have it under my common misconceptions. Let's see. Comic. Here we go. Okay, so this is by Elder Alan D. Haney of the 70, and it was April of this year. in a talk called A Living Prophet for the Latter Days. He says, brothers and sisters, unlike vintage comic books and classic cars, prophetic teachings do not become more valuable with age. That is why we should not seek to use the words of past prophets to dismiss the teachings of living prophets. Then I have another quote here by Bruce R. McConkie, but that's not really the point of this video. I'm just generally trying to explain things have changed, and it's not because when you go further back in time, they had a more pure understanding of things. If anything, they had less than what we have right now, because we move in a forward direction and we receive line upon line, precept upon precept. Okay, so enough with that. So I've done two things, or I've added two new things to this spreadsheet. One is I added this quote from John Taylor. Okay, and this is what he says. At the time, he was president of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. Journal of Discourses, volume 21, page 253, column A. Okay, he says, now then, all these dispensations had to be restored. Then comes Moses. Why? Because he held the keys of the gathering dispensation. And he conferred upon Joseph Smith the power to gather Israel from the 4 quarters of the earth and also the 10 tribes. I know, before you start typing, I know. The camp that believes that there's a hidden group somewhere say, well, there's a distinction here. There's scattered Israel, and then there's the 10 tribes in the north. I already understand that point of view. Okay, and I argue that that's not the case. We've read in Millennial Messiah, Bruce R. McConkie, he said that, yes, Israel is scattered throughout the world, but the main body that there was at one time, because there was a main body, they primarily went up into Europe, and that's where their descendants primarily are today, mixed in with the nations of the world, north of Israel. So you have like a main group up there, and then you have those that have scattered throughout the entire world. Okay. And he conferred upon Joseph Smith the power to gather Israel from the 4 quarters of the earth and also the 10 tribes. But the latter have not come yet. But, now look at this. This is key right here. This is in 1880. The latter, meaning the 10 tribes, the latter have not come yet, but people are hunting them up. Well, if they're inside the earth, if they're underneath an ice cap, if they're in outer space, then that can't be true. That can't be true. He's talking about the latter group. He just said, okay, the power to gather Israel from the 4 quarters of the earth and also the 10 tribes. So those are the two groups, right? Those that are scattered, and then the 10 tribes. And then he specifically says the latter, meaning the 10 tribes, have not come yet, but people are hunting them up. That's not possible if they're inside the earth, or if they're on another planet, or someplace that's inaccessible to us right now. Does it make sense? And then he said, and then furthermore, he says, they will be found by and by. So, because the idea that they're going to come from a hidden place, that theory and that belief system holds this notion that they're going to come suddenly. They're going to come as a big group. There's going to be some like grand event. There's going to be a literal highway of rock or ice that comes up out of the ocean. And then they're going to come through in this like massive event. It's not going to be by and by, according to that theory. But according to John Taylor, it is. That already people were hunting them up, the latter group, the 10 tribes, and that they will be found by and by. All right, continuing. When the time comes, and the mountains will flow down at their presence, and a highway will be cast up, and they will come to a knowledge of the people, but they will not come without the restoration of the keys I've referred to. And by the way, I'm not going to make the whole video about this, but the highway that's going to be cast up, when you look at the footnotes, it takes you to Isaiah, and Bruce R. McConkie and others talk about this, that the highway is the straight and narrow path. It's the covenant path. It's They have been lost. They forgot who they were. They've gone the way of the Gentiles, but they come back to Zion. They come back to the church. They come back to Jerusalem by the straight and narrow path, the covenant path. It's as simple as that. All right, continuing. Now here are all these different dispensations, and there is one I have not mentioned. We are told to build up Zion. Shall we do it? I tell you in the name of Israel's God, we will do it with the help of the Almighty. We cannot do it without, but with his help, we will do it. We will build up the Zion of our God and help to roll on the work which God has commenced. And now listen to this part, because this leads into the next thing that I've added to my spreadsheet. I've made another change to the spreadsheet. Listen to this. And those children you saw here the other day, referring to a general conference meeting of the children of Weber Stake, many of them will live to participate in these things. And we will endeavor to train them in the fear of God, that their tender hearts may be rooted in the principles of truth, and they be led to acknowledge the God of their fathers. All right. So, the children of his time. Now, unlike that other quote from Joseph Smith where he says, many of the rising generation, we don't know what that means. Bruce R. McConkie said it includes all parents of that day and their children yet to be born. That was what he said, his opinion. Who knows? Maybe Joseph Smith was talking about, the next couple generations, like this rising, group of people, the next couple generations. I don't know. But in this case, with John Taylor, he's talking about a specific group of children that had attended General Conference meeting of the children of Weber Stake in 1880. And he says, many of them will live to participate in these things. Okay, so there's a problem with that. If we're going to hold on to the idea that the 10 lost tribes are a group and they haven't shown themselves yet, they haven't come from whatever location. The problem is that 1880 was a long time ago. And I pulled up, we recently looked at this. I pulled up this Wikipedia article, list of the verified oldest people. The ones that are highlighted in green are ones that are living right now. And for between both men and women, the oldest living person is Maria Brañas from Spain. She's 116 years old, almost 117. She was born in 1907. So now you have to ask yourself, was John Taylor, am I understanding this wrong? I don't think so. It seems pretty clear. He's talking about the two different groups, those that are scattered and then those that are in the 10 tribes. Okay. And he's talking about the 10 tribes that they're currently being hunted and will be found by and by. Okay. But if you ignore that and you don't want to accept that explanation, he is saying that the children of that day in 1880 would live to see these things. None of them are alive anymore that we know of. I don't think it's possible. Let's see. Yeah, none of them are alive anymore. So I don't have a problem with this because, one, I don't believe that there's a main group or any size of hitting group as a single body somewhere. And I think that what he said has come to pass because they have come. They have been hunted up and they have been found by and by. And might as well do this. This never gets old. Let me pull up my which tribe are you from tracker. I've had a few more responses. Now I'm at 1,280 responses. And I have all the tribes right here. They're all right here. Ephraim, Manasseh, this is in order of size. Ephraim, Manasseh, Joseph, without being assigned to either Ephraim or Manasseh. Benjamin is the next biggest, and then Judah, and then Abraham. Yes, some people only have their lineage declared through Abraham. Levi, Dan, Gad, Asher, Reuben, Simeon, Naphtali, Issachar, Zebulun. They're all here. And I might point out really quick, Sister Nelson, yes, I know that she's not a general authority, but she's the prophet's wife, and she spoke jointly with him in a youth devotional in 2018. Let's take a look at how she, and by extension, President Nelson, views that. Okay? She says, we often talk about living in the latter days. We are, after all, Latter-day Saints, but perhaps these days are more latter than we ever imagined. This truth became a reality for me because of what I experienced during one 24-hour period of time that commenced on June 15th, 2013. My husband and I were in Moscow, Russia. Okay, let me skip down. Now, when I was a little girl attending primary in Raymond, Alberta, Canada, I learned that in the last days before the second coming of the Savior, the 12 tribes of Israel would be gathered. Okay, and she tells this story how in Russia she came across all the tribes except for Levi, and then they went to Armenia, and then there was somebody from Levi there. So within 24 hours, she met people from all the tribes, and she's saying right here that she learned that in the last days before the second coming of the Savior, the 12 tribes of Israel would be gathered. That truth was thrilling to me, and at the same time quite overwhelming to wrap my mind around. So imagine what it was like for me to be with members of all 12 tribes of Israel within one 24 period of time. She's saying this in a joint talk with President Nelson. Do you think that that goes against what President Nelson thinks? Probably not. She's basically saying that it's been fulfilled, that the 12 tribes have been gathered, that they've been found. And in Russia, no less. Russia, which is directly north of Israel. So I do believe that those children in 1880 did grow up and participate in this, because you have many people from Europe that have joined the church within that time frame. And of course, all throughout the world, but the main group being up in Europe and probably Northern Asia, like Russia, basically, the Ural Mountain area. Many people have joined the church from there. So anyway, what I decided to do is I added column C. Those now living will see it. So this is to track quotes where somebody said, there are people now living that will see the 10 lost tribes come. So this is my first one. John Taylor, 1880. I have another one here. Well, no, let's do this. Let's do this in order. We got to go up to James E. Talmage. Let me just double check. Yeah. He's the most recent one. James E. Talmage, 1919. This is in Articles of Faith. The book Articles of Faith, pages 294 to 295. And he says, I have to go all the way down to, I'm not going to read this entire quote. I'm just focusing on statements saying that, yes, there are people living that'll see this. He says, the tribes shall come. They are not lost unto the Lord. They shall be brought forth as hath been predicted. And I say unto you, there are those now living, aye, some here present, who shall live to read the records of the lost tribes of Israel, which shall be made one with the record of the Jews, or the Holy Bible, and the record of the Nephites, or the Book of Mormon. All right, and then so on. Okay, so in 2019, or in 1919, he said there are people then living that are going to read the records of the lost tribes. Now, that is possible, I suppose. Let's go back to the Wikipedia article. So Maria Branius was born before 1919 by a little bit. So I don't know if he's talking about just worldwide. There would be somebody that would read the record of the 10 lost tribes. I don't know. So that's plausible, although I think unlikely. He says another thing in 1916. This is in General Conference, 1916. He says, and I say unto you, there are those now living, some here present. So in this case, he's saying there at that General Conference. There are some people there at that General Conference who shall live to read the records of the lost tribes of Israel. So I don't know. I don't have access to like everybody in the church and who's the longest living member of our church. So maybe that's possible. I don't know. But there you go. He said that in 1916. Now let's go back in time. Okay, you have in 1875 Orson Pratt in the Journal of Discourses, and he says, there are persons in this congregation who will be in the midst of Zion when the 10 tribes come to Zion from the north countries, and will assist in bestowing the blessings promised by the Almighty upon the heads of the tribes of Israel. There are servants of God in the midst of this congregation who will lay their hands upon many of each of these 12,000 chosen out of the 10 tribes and set them apart as missionaries to visit the nations of the earth and hunt up the remnants of the seed of Jacob. All right, well, that was in 1875. And I think that's right. I think that did happen. But not because there was a hidden group that came from the Arctic. Unless we're talking about like Russia and like Scandinavian countries, for example. All right, 1875. Let's go even further back. All right, this is from Joseph Smith himself, 1833. You can find this in History of the Church. Again, you can find that on BYU's website. They have all 7 volumes. It's free to access. All right, he says, repent ye, and embrace the everlasting covenant, and flee to Zion before the overflowing scourge overtake you. And there are those now living upon the earth whose eyes shall not be closed in death until they see all these things. Before that, he says, to open and prepare the way for the return of the lost tribes of Israel from the north country. The people of the Lord, those who have complied with the requirements of the new covenant have already commenced gathering together to Zion. So he just talked about the return of the lost tribes from the north country, and that already they are commencing to gather to Zion. This is Joseph Smith. It's in History of the Church. If Joseph Smith says that the 10 lost tribes from the north country are already commencing to gather to Zion, and that there are those now living on the earth whose eyes shall not be closed in death until they see all these things, I'm going to say it's already happened, because it's not because they're in a hidden group somewhere. So here you have Joseph Smith, and then Orson Pratt, and then John Taylor, and then James E. Talmage, all of which said that there were people then in there that would see the lost tribes come. So you're going to have to confront that and have some kind of explanation for it. And please spare me. I know there's going to be some people that are like, well, Haven't the three Nephites been around since the time of Christ? So surely they're still. I don't think that that's what they meant. I don't. Maybe that is what they're talking about. Maybe they're referring to the three Nephites in John, but I doubt it. It sounds like they're speaking to their main audience or congregation that they're giving the speech to, or the talk to, or discourse. And I don't think any of them are alive, with the exception of James E. Talmage's group that he spoke to in General Conference. Now, he talked about people reading the scriptures, from the 10 lost tribes. And so you might be like, well, we don't have those scriptures yet. Well, how do you know? Maybe we do. Maybe they haven't been released to the church yet. Maybe they've been under translation for several decades or something like that. Or maybe they're already translated and they're going to come out at a particular time. There is one interesting thing I'll point out that Dallin H. Oaks said about these scriptures. He said in the April 2006 General Conference, okay, I better just read this whole thing. The Lord not only manifests himself to all nations, he also commands that they write his words. Know ye not that the testimony of two nations is a witness unto you that I am God, that I remember one nation like unto another. Wherefore I speak the same words unto one nation like unto another. For I command all men that they shall write the words which I speak unto them. For behold, I shall speak to the Jews, and they shall write it, and I shall speak to the Nephites, and they shall write it, and I shall speak unto the other tribes of the house of Israel, which I have led away, and they shall write it. And I shall also speak unto all nations of the earth, and they shall write it. Furthermore, the Book of Mormon teaches that all these groups will have the writings of the others. We conclude from this that the Lord will eventually cause the inspired teachings which he has given his children in various nations to be brought forth for the benefit of all people. This will include the accounts of the visit of the resurrected Lord to what we call the lost tribes of Israel and his revelations to the seed of Abraham. Now listen to this. The finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls shows one way this can occur. Why would he say that? Okay, a member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles at that time in 2006. Why would he say that if he knows that the 10 lost tribes are going to come and personally deliver them? Why would he say that? I'm thinking that he knows that that's not the case. There isn't a group that's going to come out of somewhere. So you're like, well, how are we going to get their scripture then? Well, he just said, go back in time. Go back 2,000 years when there still was a main group, and say that they're in Turkey, say that they're in Georgia, say that they're in Ukraine or Russia. So they're there. They're a group of people. Christ comes, he visits them. They've had prophets during that time. They write their scriptures. And then through the process of time, they either get conquered by the Christians, or they get conquered by the Muslims through the Muslim expansion, or something like that, and they lose their identity. Maybe somebody hides up the scriptures because they're being forcibly, converted to another religion. But there's some prophet, just like Moroni, that knows that the scriptures have to be saved and preserved for future generations, and so he hides it somewhere. He hides it over here in these mountains, or a hill Cumorah equivalent somewhere over here, or up here, or who knows where. Maybe in Belarus. I don't know. So why can't that happen? Why can't it be that maybe those scriptures were confiscated and they're over here in Rome, specifically in this little area right here called the Vatican? What if the Vatican has those scriptures? What if they were found and the church has possession of them and they've been in possession of them for a while. And so James E. Talmage's prophecy, or what he said, is actually true, because maybe there's a president of the church that's already started to translate them. There's all sorts of different possibilities that are much more practical, realistic. Not that anything is too hard for the Lord. He can make anything happen, but he likes to work through practical means. Now, in this video, I'm not about to address every single question about the 10 lost tribes, like what about this, what about that. I have a whole playlist for it where I address all those things. Not me, but prophets and apostles address those questions. Or you can just come to my spreadsheet, okay, and read through all of these. Don't just stop back here. The last time that we heard anybody support the main hidden group idea was in 1967. William J. Critchlow Jr., assistant to the Council of the 12. He was the last one that made any sort of statement in support of that idea. And after that, everyone else talks or speaks against it. So there's that. Okay, actually, that took longer than I thought. Shoot. So I will do another video. Maybe my next video will cover my quotes prophecy fulfillment 2 spreadsheet, where I've added this new row. But let me just give you a quick overview. Okay, so again, this is a collection of quotes where I've searched for these terms in the scripture citation index. I've searched yet to be fulfilled, not yet been fulfilled, not been fulfilled, and there's going to be other ones. This is the most recent one. I've color coded them. If they're green, then this term is in the quote, but what they're not saying that there's like they're telling like a story, like, oh, back in that time, this had not yet been fulfilled, but now it is. Okay. So that's like an example. So they're not saying that there's something that still has to be fulfilled at the time that they give this talk. They're telling a story of something that happened in the past when at that time it was not yet fulfilled, but now it is. And so I've color coded those green. Quotes that are ambiguous, we don't know if they're specifically referring to prophecies before the second coming that still have to be fulfilled. They're just talking in an ambiguous, nondescript way. They're just like, there's, still more prophecies to be fulfilled, which could include the second coming itself, the resurrection, the millennium, on and on and on. It's not clear, so I color it gray. And then if it's specifically, they're saying specifically that this has to happen before the second coming and it hasn't been fulfilled yet, then I color it this red color. And then if they're saying they're referring to specifically the second coming, then I put that in yellow, because I'm not interested if we know that the second coming hasn't happened yet. That's not really what I'm searching for, but I have it here, so I have everything complete, and it's in yellow. Okay, so as you can see, there aren't any reds anytime recently. Well, the closest that you can get is in 2004 by Robert D. Hales, and his statement was ambiguous. He wasn't specifically saying that this has to happen before the second coming. He just generically says there's more prophecies yet to be fulfilled. So as of right now, on my spreadsheet, you have to go back to 1884, Charles W. Penrose, to find any sort of statement that says that this has not been fulfilled yet, and therefore the second coming can't happen. You'll also notice, if I zoom in, there's one person in particular that really liked to talk about prophecies being fulfilled or not fulfilled. One of the big four, Orson Pratt. I've coined this idea of the big four. There's four general authorities that essentially went into these like niche subjects, whether it's like the 144,000, whether it's the 10 lost tribes, whether it's whatever. And they have something to say about all of them. Joseph Fielding Smith, Bruce R. McConkie, James E. Talmage, and Orson Pratt. Those are the ones that have like covered all the topics, that aren't talked about very much. So Orson Pratt, I think that's why you see his name a lot down here. Most of these are Orson Pratt. See, Orson Pratt, Orson Pratt, Orson Pratt. I put the names so you could easily see that. Orson Pratt, Orson Pratt, Orson Pratt. Orson Pratt everywhere except for Wilford Woodruff, David Mackenzie, Erastus Snow, John Taylor, and another Wilford Woodruff. All the rest are Orson Pratt. Except for back here, you have Heber C. Kimball, Wilford Woodruff, and that's it. Charles W. Penrose, Joseph F. Smith. So that's kind of how it's starting to shape up. Feel free to submit other terms that I should search to try and find conference talks that talk about this has not been fulfilled yet, because I want to try and get this as complete as possible. It's going to take time, but I am willing to do that work. Okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also, make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.